Earlier tonight, I spoke with Sean, a resident of Craig Ranch, who was at the pool with his wife and his two young children, including a 7-year-old, as well as another friend from the neighborhood when the chaos started. So how did you know things were out of hand? I mean, what made you call the cops?
Well, one, the music that was being played by the DJ it wasn't appropriate for kids that are my son's age, and quite honestly, it wasn't appropriate for some of the teenagers that were there. And then just the attacks that some of the residents started being called racist for telling the security guard that about the kids who were jumping the fence. And
so the residents were called racists for pushing back on the kids who were jumping the fence. Did you hear any of the residents use any racist terms?
I didn't hear anything like that. The stuff I was hearing was towards the residents of the pool, saying you guys just don't want any black people here and you're racist and white.
Well, there was an allegation that somebody there, that a security guard there had said to those jumping the fence something like, go back to public housing.
No, I never heard him say anything even remotely similar to that.
When did it escalate to violence?
When I was taking my family back home because my sons were crying and scared, the verbal altercation started when we were walking out and with another group, and it spiraled from there.
What was it that scared your son?
It was, I think, the things being yelled to the parents about, all the teens yelling to us, just the overall atmosphere was pretty intimidating for a 7-year-old.
The real pushback has been on this one police officer, this Corporal Eric Casebolt, who's a 10-year veteran of the force, for, in particular, taking down this 14-year-old girl, African-American girl, taking her down and putting a knee in her back in what is a shocking piece of videotape. In addition to the way he handled the other teenagers who were running around, people are saying he's a racist, explicitly saying he's a racist, others saying he used excessive force, he was too aggressive, and he mishandled the situation. What say you?
I would disagree. He was the first officer to arrive there, and I mean, it was chaos when he arrived there, and I think he kind of had to match that situation with a good amount of aggression to kind of calm the crowd down. I was within feet of him when he sat down 13 to 15 kids and made them sit down on the ground, and the only people he were going after were people who just got up and started running, and it wasn't just black kids. There was a white female was one of the first ones I saw in handcuffs. So I thought he acted the way he needed to help in the chaos that was happening.
But let me ask you about that, because one of the allegations is he only went after the black kids. Was it just the one white person who you saw him place in cuffs, or did you see him go after anybody else who was white?
I only saw him going after people who were running. He was only chasing people who got up and ran away from him.
Did you see any white people running away? Did he chase any whites other than, or was it all blacks?
I didn't see any white people running away. The majority of the people I saw get up and run were black.
Mm-hmm. What about the 14-year-old girl? Because, you see that tape and it is brutal to watch. How can you justify it? Because people will be at home saying, how's he defending that?
Well, I think, the officer gave her a chance to leave, multiple times told her to leave, and she refused. And one of the things I don't think is also being talked about is the officer ran out of handcuffs. And I think if he would have had handcuffs on him, he would have been able to cuff this girl and it wouldn't have gone this far. But, he was kind of sitting on her back waiting for other officers to bring cuffs over.
I realize this is a 7-minute videotape. How long did the incident last?
It had at least started 45 minutes before that 7-minute video was taken, and it probably lasted a good, 15, 20 minutes after as well.
Describe the scene that officer walked into, because, we see it and kids are running and he starts running and he seems pretty amped up.
He was, and I think it's just because of the situation he walked into. I mean, there was just people everywhere. People were screaming, and there was little kids running away from the pool crying. So I mean, he walked into a pretty intense situation. So I think he just matched the intensity that he walked into.
Were there any physical altercations other than the one that we saw between him and the 14-year-old girl?
There was a fight between a young black girl and two middle-aged white females.
Security officers? Were they security guards? The women? The older women?
They were not. One of them I know was a resident. The other one I believe was visiting a resident there.
Mm-hmm. And was that before or after the police arrived?
This was before the police arrived.
Okay. Was it one of the reasons?
I was actually on the phone with the police when the fight happened, and I was telling them, hey, you guys got to get somebody here because their fights are breaking out now. And
what do you make, what is the status in the area now? Because we've spoken with some residents who say they're scared. Anybody who defends the cops, one guy says he's had death threats and has had armed security posted outside of his house. What has your experience been?
At this point, the whole neighborhood is pretty uneasy. I mean, there's a protest that's happening tonight, and based on what we've seen nationally, a lot of the neighbors are kind of concerned about how it may end. And I think the majority of us, even as a whole community in Craig Ranch, have been labeled a certain way, and that's not sitting well with anybody. Most of the people I've talked to support what the police did, and most people don't think this is a race issue. This is a out-of-control kids issue.
Mm-hmm. And what about you, Sean? I know you didn't want to give your last name. Are you scared? I mean, are you concerned for your own safety?
I'm concerned for my family's safety. Like I said, we've been getting a lot of calls, a lot of people wanting to talk to us, and based on what we've seen about some of the Facebook and people on Twitter, some of the stuff being said about people siding with the police, I think we have good reason to be a bit concerned.
Thank you for sharing your story with us. We appreciate it, Sean.
I appreciate it. Thank you.